Welcome everybody to Getting In, a College Coach Conversation. I have balloons. 300th. This is our 300th episode, and it is almost Halloween, which is why I am in a witch's getup and I have these silly glasses. However, we're doing a serious show today, even if I don't look serious. But I did want to let you guys know, if you are new to the show, if you're not listening regularly, head over to Apple Podcasts and subscribe. It's free. They'll notify you every time there is a new show. Later in the show, we're going to announce the winner of our contest. We asked all of you to review us, and we're going to choose a winner. And one of you lucky listeners is going to get 2 free hours with one of our admissions or finance experts. You're going to get to choose. But before we get to that and your questions, which is what we're going to do for most of the show, we're going to be talking about supplemental essays. It's a series that we do all fall long, and I'm very excited to welcome my colleague, Steve Brennan, who has been an admissions officer at not just Occidental, not just Loyola University Chicago, not just Regis in Colorado, but also Marquette. So 4 schools and background that he brings to the show today. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Beth.
Hi.
Nice to see you. Love the
nice
getup.
to see you. Thank you. And I love that you're a guest on our 300th show. And yet, as you just mentioned, this is only your 3rd show. So essentially, you show up every 100 episodes, and I'm super excited to have you here today.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Cool. And we may rope you in for more of these in the coming years. All right. We have 2 schools whose supplemental essays we're going to be talking through today. And so I want to get right to it. I want to start with Arizona State, and specifically what we're talking about with Arizona State is the Honors College. Now, they have a priority deadline of November 1st, which, is in just a couple of days. So if you are applying to the Honors College and you're wondering, gosh, how am I going to answer these questions? All right, Steve, you are here to help us with that. There are 2. And what Arizona State is asking you to do is choose one. So we're going to talk you through both, and then you can make the decision of which one you want to choose. The first option, all human knowledge is erased. Only one object or one sentence can be shared with the next generation. What one thing should be passed on, or what single statement would contain the most valuable information in the fewest words? Defend your selection. If you choose to address this prompt with an object, do not select a thumb drive, computer, etc. for its memory storage capacity. So don't try and cheat the system that way. All right, Steve, what's your advice here?
I love that last sentence there, because someone tried it, right?
More than someone, probably many, right?
For sure, and that's the first impulse. So these questions are tricky. I think option A is honestly a little harder, and it's asking you really, if there's a global reset, all human knowledge is erased. There's a global reset. What do you want to preserve? So what are your core values? What's something that is so important that it trumps everything else that you want to pass on, right? So Baird is looking for intellectual curiosity. They want to get a sense for how your brain works. They want to get a sense for how you like to learn. They also are trying to get a sense for your ability to write. And this is one where you could really show your chops, right? Mm-hmm. It's super creative, and there's not one right answer. And Beth, I used to say for these, there's no right or wrong answer. I think there are some that could be wrong.
Sure.
Not just the computer thumb drive, right? But thinking about what is that one thing you want to transmit and being able to defend it. I think this is one where you can take a little bit of a chance, plant your flag, and defend it. I think this really gives you an opportunity to do that. I think it's tricky, though. I think you have to really be clear about why, whatever that thing is that you want to be passed on, right? What one thing should be passed on, or what single statement would contain the most valuable information in the fewest words. Whichever one of those you choose, and choose one, you really have to be prepared to defend it and have a clear sense of why, what it is that you want to transmit through that.
Right. I think you hit on all the important points. And I think the key pieces that you set up front are they're trying to understand how you think and engage and write. And so you need to display all of those things in this response, as you do in the next one. But I agree, that one's a tricky one. Well, here's the second option. Discuss how a piece of art, painting, literature, photograph, etc. So of course you have to define art, or popular culture, song, comic book, etc., helped you realize something new about yourself or the world. What was that realization, and how did the piece of art or pop culture bring about this change in your thinking? Do not simply describe the piece of art or pop culture, instead focus on its effect on you.
Again, that last sentence, right? You know, someone just described the art. This is true for all of these, for
Yes.
almost every prompt, right? When it says describe and its effect on you, they don't need you to describe the Mona Lisa. They don't need you to describe that piece of art. You know, they need you to talk about, most importantly, its effect on you, right?
Right.
Um, again, creativity, skill with writing. This one feels a little more accessible. And that realization, something new about yourself or your world. What gave you a new lens
Right.
through which to see something? Was it a song that you'd heard 500 times, but on that 501st time, a penny dropped for you? You had a new way of thinking about someone else's experience, about how you view the world. Were you able to be in someone else's shoes for a second? Is it a favorite book that you've read multiple times, or maybe the first time,
Mm-hmm.
and it allowed you to engage with others, engage with an idea? It expanded you in some ways. It gave you new tools through which to understand other information. Any of those approaches can be great. You have to start with the second half, though. What was the
Yes.
realization, and how did it bring about this change, right?
Yep.
So start there, get clarity there. When you write it, you don't necessarily have to start there, but when you think, when you're brainstorming, that's what you need to start with.
Yeah, and one thing I did want to point out, and you pointed again to the second or the very last part of the question, because as with the first, I think they are being very specific here and giving you some good guidance. So their initial question says, it helped you realize something new about yourself or the world. But in the end, they say, focused on its effect on you, right? So at the end of the day, this isn't about its effect on the world. It may have made you see something differently. It is ultimately about its effect on you. So it all at the end of the day needs to come back to you when you're reading this. So never leave out the you. This is a personal essay after all, and we need to see you in it, right?
Absolutely. And every college essay that you write, ultimately the subject is you.
Yes.
I mean, it's rare that there's one that's not, right?
Yep.
So it's always about how did this change you? And these are short. I mean, you don't have a ton of room. You don't have thousands of words, right? It's 300 to 500 words. And so you have to be ruthless. You have to be super self-disciplined and narrowly focused, and say what you want to say in that amount of time. 500 words is enough that you can have a little bit of an introduction, a little bit of a summation, but you don't have room for a big long windup. You don't have room for an extended metaphor. You should never use an
No,
extended
you
metaphor.
shouldn't anyway, right?
Ever.
Leave that behind.
Yep. But you really have to be very clear before you set, fingers to keyboard about what that is, what that change is, how it's helped you evolve and grow. That's what's important here.
I love it. All right. That's for those of you who are applying to Barrett Honors College at Arizona State. Okay, we're going to move on to the University of Washington. The deadline for this application, there is no priority or regular. It is all due by November 15th. So you've got to get this in within a couple of weeks. First question is pretty straightforward. Tell a story from your life, describing an experience that either demonstrates your character or helped to shape it. This is your main essay that you're using for all of your other applications, right? It's your Common App essay or your coalition essay. Steve, you noted something. It originally said 500 words. That has changed. What is the new length for this essay?
It's 650 now, as the Common Application main essay is 650. And so if you know you're applying to UW, write to this prompt, right?
Yep.
Don't use one of the other Common App or Coalition App prompts, because this is the one they want, and it's broad enough, it can capture almost everything, right?
Yeah.
So you just need to make sure that you address the key part about that character, demonstrating it or shaping it.
Right. Good points. Okay, so here comes another one that is required. Our families and communities often define us and our individual worlds. Community might refer to your cultural group, extended family, religious group, neighborhood or school, sports team or club, coworkers, etc., etc. I added the second, etc. Describe the world you come from and how you, as a product of it, might add to the diversity of the UW.
So you've only got 300 words here. And this is one of those deceptive questions, Beth, where
Yes.
students look at it and they think, oh, this is easy. And it's a little trickier than you think, right? So a couple things here. Describe the world you come from and how you, as a product of it, might add to the diversity of the UW. Describing the world that you come from is easy. You pick one part of your world, fine.
Yes.
Don't start with that. That's the easy part. Think about what you're good at. Think about your skill sets. Think about what your, and I hesitate always to use the word passions with teenagers, with anyone. I think it's, I think humans, that's so much pressure. The
Yes.
expectation is not that you have a passion. What are your curiosities? What are things that you geek out about? What are things that when you start talking about them, your friends say, oh, okay, here she goes again, right?
Mhm.
And think about how you're going to inject to bring that enthusiasm to the campus.
Yes.
That's one place to start. Now, when we see the word diversity, what's the first thing we do? We go to culture, we go to ethnicity, we go to religion. And if you have something to talk about there that you want to share with the UW, great, perfect, of course, write that essay. That's great. I talked with a student a couple of weeks ago who was writing about how he went reluctantly kicking and screaming to Tamil school. His parents made him take Tamil language school on the weekends. He hated it. And then he learned how rich his culture was. He had this connection with his grandparents now. He had this connection with his culture. He was really proud of it. And as we talked, it was clear that that gave him a position from which to stand with confidence in a school that was not majority Tamil, right? In
Right.
Western Washington State.
Right.
And so he was super excited and proud of that culture now. And he was absolutely going to bring that to the UW. Great.
Yes.
But if you are in Model UN
Mhm.
and you're super excited about international relations, can you write about that as a way to bring diversity to the UW? Absolutely. Do that.
Yes.
You don't have to come from a different cultural background. You don't have to have that unique story like the young man I just talked about. A student I had a couple of years ago, the world that he came from, he said, was his math socks nerd club. 0 period before school, they would meet, they would all wear these nerd socks that they thought gave them good luck on math tests and study. And his enthusiasm for math came out of that. And he thought that was one way that he was going to inject that into the UW campus, which I thought was wonderful, and quirky and
Yes.
fun, and so him. So
Yeah, exactly. I think that's such a great example because so many students sort of are scrambling, well, how will I add to diversity? And they immediately go to those groups like you mentioned. And yet there is so much more in the world that we all bring to the table every day from our own unique perspectives. And I've had students write the community essay about their involvement in their student union, in student government, a friend group, that they've had for a long time, or a new friend group that they've made, or playing in the band in that community. There's so many different communities that you're all a part of. And so it's all about figuring out the one that matters the most to you. So I love that. All right, there are 2 optional sections in the University of Washington's application, and we're not really going to dig into those today. All I will say is that it's perfectly acceptable to leave those blank if you don't have anything to add. Most students do. This is very much like the additional information section in the Common App, which again, most students leave blank. It's totally fine. So if you read those and you think, I don't have anything to put here, awesome, move on. You don't need to worry about putting anything there. But what I do want to do, Steve, is get to the honors program, as we've only got a few minutes left. So
sure.
UW has 2 honors program questions. The first is, what is your understanding of the UW interdisciplinary honors program, and why do you want to be a part of it? 300 words.
So this needs you to have an understanding, of the benefits of interdisciplinary study.
Yes.
And students say, well, it's to be well-rounded. And I say, well, why is it good to be well-rounded? And often I get an answer around, well, it's good to be well-rounded because it's good to be well-rounded. What's the intellectual benefit from that?
Yeah.
What is it about the interdisciplinary program that's going to give you different tools, a different way of thinking about things, talking about things, analyzing data? That's an advantage. What's the advantage of that? How is that a good thing? So have some clarity around that piece to be able to answer this prompt.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, second question. Consider 2 very different subjects you have previously studied. Tell us how you imagine bringing those together at UW, interdisciplinary, anyone, to engage with a pressing societal concern. This could be a local, national, or global concern.
So here's one of the few where I say not to start with the second half, where it says this could be a local, national, or global concern. Sometimes students start in 300 words, they're going to solve climate change, and you're
Yes.
not, right? So think about this time, that's just a hint at the end. Think about the rest of the prompt, right? 2 very different subjects. So that is not geometry and algebra.
Yes. Good
It's
point.
algebra and French, or physics and history. how you imagine bringing those together at UW to engage with a pressing societal concern. Start with a societal concern first. Think about what issue you want to address, and then think about what subjects will allow you to engage that. If it is climate change, that's one they hear a lot, but that's obviously it's important for all of us. If that's one that you want to engage with, think about, okay, science and sociology or communication or psychology, right? Think about maybe after the summer, a lot of students have been involved in social activism in a way they haven't been before. Great. Think about, okay, history and needing an understanding of how these circumstances happened, as well as, again, maybe psychology, or maybe thinking about statistics and how that can help bring a new insight into this particular challenge. So be creative with that, but make sure they are different subjects, not too closely related.
Exactly, not different variations. And I think that algebra and statistics is a great example, or chemistry and biology. This is not what we're looking for. We're looking, it's the interdisciplinary piece. They're kind of looking to see, you've said what you think is going to be beneficial to you, and now they want to see how you might bring some things together. So they kind of, one really does follow the other.
That's right.
Steve, thank you so much for joining today. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, Beth. Enjoy the holiday.
All right, thank you.
Take care.
We're going to be back in just a minute, and we're going to be announcing our contest winner, and we are also going to answer your questions, so don't go away.